My brother-in-law came crying poor again, saying he couldn't make his car payment and demanding I give him 20,000 yuan. I refused point blank, but my wife was furious, and that very night, she declared that our household would officially go Dutch. From now on, whoever spends the money will bear the cost themselves. She dropped the ultimatum. I didn't say a word, letting her rant. The next day, she woke me up, her face filled with anger. The sun's already high in the sky. Why are you still sleeping? Don't you need to work? I threw off the covers, my gaze icy. Isn't it, AA? My money, I'll spend it however I want. If you don't think it's enough, then earn it yourself. She stood there, mouth agape, her anger mixed with disbelief. I knew the show had just begun. Bang! The door slammed shut with immense force, shaking the entire apartment. The wedding photo hanging on the wall tilted. In the picture, Chun Yao smiled brilliantly, leaning against me like a blooming sunflower. But now, the air was filled only with the suffocating scent of her cheap perfume mixed with lingering rage. I lay quietly on the bed, listening to the sound of her high heels fading down the hallway, like a hurried and defeated exit song. Only when the sound completely disappeared did I slowly sit up. Sunlight streamed through a gap in the curtains, casting a dazzling band of light on the floor, dust swirling and dancing in the beam. This house hadn't been this quiet in a long time. Last night's quarrel was still vivid in my mind. My brother-in-law, Chun Hao, the adult child pampered to the heavens by my mother-in-law and my wife Chin Yao, had once again dumped his mess in front of me. Brother-in-law, I can't make the payments on my BMW. I'm just short 20,000. Can you cover it for me first? I'll definitely pay you back later. His tone was self-righteous, as if I were the one who owed him money. I looked at his oily, powdered face and Chun Yao's expectant expression beside him, feeling a wave of nausea. This wasn't the first time. From buying a phone to squandering money on dating, and now this luxury car beyond his means, every deficit had been filled by me. This time, I was fed up. I don't have money. My answer was clear and concise, leaving no room for negotiation. Chin Yao's face immediately fell. Linja, how can you say that? He's my brother. Are you just going to watch him get chased by creditors? His debt is from his own spending, not caused by me. I have no obligation to pay for his vanity. We're family. Why distinguish between each other when we're family? Really, I sneered, looking up at her. Then from today onwards, we'll distinguish between each other. And so, Chin Yao, in her exasperation, uttered the words she thought would control me. Fine. Linja, you forced me into this. Starting tomorrow, this household will be AA. All expenses split evenly. Whoever spends the money will bear the cost themselves. She thought this would be my hell. She was wrong. This was the beginning of my new life. I slowly got out of bed and walked into the bathroom. The person in the mirror was me, Linja, 35 years old, a middle manager at a company, and once a husband full of responsibility for his family. But long-term forbearance and concession, like water eroding stone, had long since worn away my patience. I finished washing up and ambled into the living room. The dining table was empty, only 2 cold sets of cutlery, like a silent accusation of last night's quarrel. Usually, by this time, there would be breakfast made by Chun Yao on the table, even if it was just a bowl of plain porridge and a boiled egg. Today, she used this method to announce her retaliation. I silently curled my lips and walked straight to the refrigerator. I opened the refrigerator door, and a blast of cold air hit me. On the left were all sorts of snacks, yogurt, and instant products Chun Yao had stuffed in. On the right was my own section, which I had replenished last week. Fresh bacon, New Zealand butter, edible raw eggs, and several kinds of crisp green vegetables. I took out a frying pan, turned on the heat, and drizzled in some olive oil. The bacon sizzled in the pan, and the aroma quickly filled the entire kitchen. I cracked 2 eggs, watching the yolks form perfectly in the pan. Finally, I toasted 2 slices of whole wheat bread and brewed a cup of hand-ground coffee. The entire process was unhurried and full of ritual. I carried this lavish, single breakfast to the dining table, placing it next to the lonely set of cutlery. The stark contrast was like a silent slap in the face. I sat down, leisurely scrolling through financial news on my phone while enjoying my breakfast. The savory bacon, the tender eggs, the rich coffee. Every taste reminded me how good it felt to live for myself. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Chen Yao's call came right on time. Her voice was filled with suppressed anger and a hint of imperceptible grievance. Linja, I just got a text. The water, electricity, and gas bills are due. It's 860 total. You go 50-50, transfer me 430. I put down the document in my hand, leaned back in my office chair, my tone calm and steady. Send me the bills to look at. Look at what? Isn't it all the same? Just transfer it already. She sounded very impatient. It's not the same. I explained slowly. Since we're splitting the cost, we have to be precise. Send me the detail bills. Tell me how many units of water you used these past few months and how many I used. You're home every day, showering and cooking. I'm sometimes away on business trips or working overtime. You definitely use more water and electricity than I do. On the other end of the line, Chen Yao was clearly stunned. And there are the shared expenses, I added, like the living room lights, the water heater, the refrigerator. We can divide those based on the time we each spend at home, or by the square footage of the rooms we use. You could draw up a detailed list, and we can discuss a fair ratio. Dead silence. A few seconds later, Chen Yao's hysterical roar came through. Linja, are you fucking serious? Are you insane? Didn't you always pay for everything before? Before was before. Now, you're the one who proposed splitting everything. I reminded her, oh, and by the way, from now on, for cleaning the common areas, we'll take turns, 1 week each. If you don't want to clean, you can hire a cleaner. You'll pay for it, because you were the one who broke our tacit understanding of shared responsibility. I'll keep my own bedroom clean. I didn't wait for her to finish and hung up the phone directly. Outside the office blinds, the sunlight was perfect. The corners of my mouth lifted slightly. I could even picture Chen Yao on the other end, stamping her feet in fury but utterly helpless. This was just the beginning. When I got home that evening, a sour smell hit me the moment I opened the door. The living room was a mess. The takeout container from her lunch was tossed on a coffee table. A pile of her changed clothes was on the sofa, and there were several wads of used tissues on the floor. This was her silent protest. Chen Yao was sitting on the sofa, arms crossed, glaring at me with a livid face. She was clearly waiting for me to back down first and silently clean up the mess, just like I always did. I ignored her fury, not even sparing her a glance. I walked straight through the living room, only hanging up my own coat and putting my leather shoes in the shoe cabinet. Then, I went into the kitchen. I took out the fresh steak I had bought at the supermarket downstairs from my office that afternoon and began to prepare dinner for one. Rinsing, marinating, heating the pan, adding the oil. The wonderful sizzle as the steak hit the scorching cast iron pan and the rich aroma of butter instantly filled the space, completely overpowering the sour smell of takeout. I cooked with intense focus, as if I were the only one in the house. In the living room, Chen Yao was fidgeting. The overpowering, savory scent was like an invisible hand, constantly scratching at her stomach. She finally couldn't take it anymore. She rushed to the kitchen doorway, staring at the steak in my pan and swallowing hard. Linja, what is the meaning of this? You're only making enough for yourself. I plated the seared steak, added a few florets of blanched broccoli, and drizzled it with black pepper sauce. Perfect. Carrying my dinner, I walked past her and said lightly, "Weren't you the one who said we should each be responsible for our own costs? So now, I'm only responsible for my own." I sat down at the dining table, cut a small piece of steak, and put it in my mouth. The meat was tender and juicy. Chen Yao stood right next to me, stomach empty, her eyes red as she watched me enjoy the meal by myself. Her chest heaved violently. Finally, the anger and grievance that had been building all day erupted completely. "Linja, you cold-blooded animal. You have no heart. After all these years of marriage, this is how you treat me?" I chewed slowly and methodically, swallowed the food in my mouth, and then wiped my lips with a napkin. I raised my head and looked at her calmly, as if looking at a stranger throwing an unreasonable tantrum. "Chen Yao, who was the first to suggest splitting costs? You were. Who was the first to destroy this home? You were. Did you think splitting costs was just a tool to get me to pay half the money for you to clean up your little brother's messes? Every bit of discomfort, hunger, and neglect you're feeling right now is of your own choosing. Welcome to the Go Dutch hell you created yourself." My words left her speechless, her face flushing red and then turning pale. In the end, all she could do was glare at me viciously, as if she wanted to skin me alive. And I, under her furious gaze, felt incomparably delighted. Round 1, I won. The next morning, I was woken up by the sound of Chun Yao rummaging through cabinets and drawers. She seemed to be in a hurry, muttering to herself, full of irritation. After a moment, she burst into the bedroom, her voice urgent. Linja, where are the car keys? I'm going to be late for work. I lifted a corner of the quilt, revealing my eyes, and looked at her face, slightly distorted by anxiety. The car is in my name, a prenuptial asset. According to our Go Dutch principle, it's my private property. Chen Yao's expression froze. What do you mean? Haven't I been the one driving it ever since we got married? That was because I was willing to let you drive it. I sat up, leaning against the headboard, and looked at her at my leisure. Now we're going Dutch. The costs of using the car, including gas, maintenance, and insurance, should all be borne by the user. If you want to continue using it, fine, we can sign a rental agreement, and you can pay me at the market rate. You're insane. Chen Yao trembled with anger. I don't have time for this. I'm going to be late for work. That's your problem, not mine. I spread my hands. You can choose to take a taxi or the bus. Oh, by the way, a friendly reminder, when I came back last night, I think I saw the right rear tire looking a bit flat. It might be out of air. Chen Yao's face instantly turned ghastly pale. She rushed out of the bedroom, and a few seconds later, I heard her desperate scream from the balcony. It really is flat. She ran back in, begging me with a sob in her voice. Linja, help me change the spare tire, please. I'm really going to be late. I'll lose my perfect attendance bonus this month. I took out my phone and opened a ride-hailing app. Since we're going Dutch, things like vehicle repair are naturally the responsibility of the vehicle's owner or primary user. I'm sorry, but I'm choosing to travel green today and take the bus to the office. After saying that, I ignored her and got up to wash my face and brush my teeth. Behind me were her furious curses and finally the sound of her slamming the door in helpless frustration as she left. Half an hour later, I received a call from her. The background noise on her end was loud, mixed with the honking of cars. Linja, I told you I was going to be late. The taxi is stuck in traffic. I've lost $500 from my perfect attendance bonus this month. It's all your fault. Her voice was filled with resentment. I put the phone on speaker, placed it on my desk, and listened to her complaints while I organized my documents. I didn't speak, didn't argue, and didn't offer any comfort. It was like listening to a weather forecast from a distant place that had nothing to do with me. She only hung up resentfully when her own mouth was dry and she was tired of cursing. On the weekend, I had a rare moment of leisure and was reading at home. Chen Yao's phone suddenly rang, the sharp ringtone shattering the quiet of the room. It was her precious younger brother, Chun Hao. As soon as Chun Yao answered the phone, her face changed. What? The car was towed? Why? On the other end of the line, Chun Hao's voice was urgent and panicked. I could hear the sob in his voice even through the phone. Sis, you have to save me. The car loan payments are too overdue. The bank towed the car directly. They said if I don't pay off the remaining $200,000, they're going to auction it. Sis, that's my BMW. Chun Yao's heart clenched. She clutched her chest and paced anxiously in the living room. Okay, don't panic first. I'll think of something. After hanging up, she immediately threw herself in front of me as if grasping at a lifeline, her face wearing a deliberately fawning and pleading expression. Honey, Linja, you see, Xiao Hao. I turned a page of my book without even lifting my eyelids. That's your brother's business. But he's your brother too. She was on the verge of tears from anxiety. Just lend him $200,000 for now. Consider a loan for me. Okay? I'll pay you back slowly in the future. I finally closed the book and looked up at her. My gaze must have been very cold, because she subconsciously took a step back. First, we're going Dutch. My money is mine to control completely. I will not invest my money in a bottomless pit that is destined to be a total loss. Second, he is not my brother. Legally, we are only relatives by marriage. And now, our marital relationship is also on the brink of collapse, so, to me, he is an irrelevant stranger. Third, how will you pay me back? With your monthly salary of $6,000, after your own expenses and subsidizing your needy family of origin, Can you afford to pay it back? My words were like daggers to the heart. Chen Yao's face turned from red to white, then from white to ashen. She knew I was telling the truth and was powerless to refute it, able only to glare at me with venomous eyes. Linja, you're so cruel. She turned and rushed to the balcony, starting to make frantic phone calls. First, to her best friends. Hey, Xiaoli, I'm a bit tight on money lately. Could you lend me some to tide me over for a bit? 200,000? Yao Yao, are you kidding? Where'd I get that much money? I just bought a new car last month. She was rejected. She called another person. Hey, Miley. Oh, Yao Yao, what bad timing. My husband recently lost money in the stock market. We can barely make ends meet ourselves. She was rejected again. Unwilling to give up, she started calling relatives. Without exception, those who usually treated her like a sister and had received many small favors from her, the moment they heard the words lend money, especially the sum of 200,000, all recoiled as if from the plague and hurried to make excuses to refuse. I sat on the sofa, seemingly reading a book, but in reality, every one of her humble pleas, every silence after a rejection, clearly reached my ears. This is the plastic friendship you maintain with my money, Chen Yao. Now, it's time for you to taste the flavor of reality yourself. When dinner time came, Chen Yao hadn't cooked. She sat on the sofa, her eyes red and swollen. Seeing me get up and head towards the kitchen, a glimmer of hope flashed in her eyes. She probably hoped that I would let bygones be bygones, and, seeing how pitiful she was, make an extra meal for her. I didn't make extra. No, I should say I specifically went downstairs to get a takeout of her favorite pickled fish dish from that restaurant. I placed the braised pork I cooked and the fragrant pickled fish together on the dining table. Then I sat opposite her, and in front of her, I took big bites of the braised pork, then picked up a large serving of pickled fish with my chopsticks, eating with great relish. The tangy sourness of the pickled vegetables and the tenderness of the fish made her involuntarily swallow. Her gaze shifted from anticipation to disappointment, then to anger, finally transforming into humiliation. Linja, she suddenly stood up and, with a sweep, knocked the empty bowl and chopsticks in front of her onto the floor. Crash! The sound of shattering porcelain was sharp and piercing. She pointed at me, tears rolling down her face like a string of pearls that had broken. You're a devil. You're doing this on purpose, aren't you? You're deliberately tormenting me. With that, she cried and ran back to the bedroom, slamming the door shut with a bang once more. I looked at the mess on the floor and unhurriedly finished the last bite of my meal. Then I got up, took out a broom and dustpan, and slowly swept up the broken pieces. My mood remained completely unaffected. I even felt that the sound of the door slamming was far more pleasant than her crying. In the middle of the night, I was woken by faint moans coming from the living room. I walked out and saw Chen Yao curled up on the sofa, trembling all over, her face flushed red. I reached out and touched her forehead. It was burning hot. She had a fever. She groggily opened her eyes, saw me, and spoke weakly. I feel terrible. Lin, please get me some medicine. Her voice carried a trace of dependence, a habit that had formed over the past few years. I turned and walked into the bedroom, took out fever reducers and a thermometer from the medicine cabinet, and poured a glass of warm water. I placed all these items on the coffee table next to her. Then I looked at her, my voice calm, but every word distinct. The medicine is here. The water is here too. Keep a record of the medical expenses and the cost of this glass of water yourself. When we split the costs later, we'll settle it all clearly. With that, I felt no lingering attachment, turned, walked back to my room, and gently closed the door. Outside the door, her desperate, uncontrollable sobs could be heard. But I lay on the bed, my mind completely calm. Chen Yao, you're physically and mentally exhausted. You're desperate and helpless. Good. You deserve all of this. This game you started, I'll play it with you to the very end. My mother-in-law's call came the next morning, or rather than a call. It was a roar across the airwaves. Linja, you heartless wretch. Xiao Hao's car has been impounded, and you're just going to stand by and watch. Are you even a man anymore? How could Chen Yao have married such an ungrateful wolf like you? I held the phone away from my ear and waited for a brief pause in her rant before speaking calmly. Mom, firstly, Chen Yao and I are operating on an AA system, splitting costs. and she was the one who proposed it. Secondly, Chun Hao is an adult. He should be responsible for his own actions. AA system? AA your head. You're a grown man, calculating everything so precisely with your own wife. Have you no shame? Respect is earned, not given by others. The same goes for money. You just wait. The call was abruptly hung up. I had anticipated her coming, but I didn't expect it to be so soon. Less than an hour later, the doorbell was ringing like crazy, with an intensity that suggested she was there to tear down my front door. I opened the door to my mother-in-law's furious face, thrust right at me. Behind her was Chun Yao, her face a mask of grievance, tears streaming down like pear blossoms in the rain. Linja, explain yourself. By what right do you wash your hands of Xiao Hao? As soon as she entered, my mother-in-law planted her hands on her hips, assuming the air of an inquisitor. Spittle flew as she spoke. I stepped aside to let her in, then closed the door, shutting out the prying eyes of the neighbors. I have no obligation to take care of him, I repeated. My mother-in-law was so enraged she was at a loss for words. She had probably never seen me take such a firm stance. She glanced around the apartment and, as if finding a new battlefield, charged into the kitchen and yanked open the refrigerator door. I can't be bothered to waste my breath on you. I'm going to make something for Yao Yao to eat. Look how haggard she is. As she spoke, she reached for the piece of Wagyu beef I had in the fridge. My hand clamped down on her wrist. Ma! My voice wasn't loud, but it was enough to make her freeze. She looked at me, stunned. This is my personal property, I said, word by word. According to the agreement between Chun Yao and me, we go Dutch. If you want to use the ingredients in my fridge, you need to ask me beforehand and pay the market price for them. The air instantly froze. My mother-in-law's eyes bulged like brass bells. She couldn't believe her ears. What did you say? I have to pay to use your things? Linja, have you gone mad from poverty? I'm not mad. I released her hand and took a step back, keeping my distance. I'm just following the rules. The rules Chun Yao said. My mother-in-law's face turned the color of pig's liver. She pointed at my nose and began to curse. You animal. No, you're worse than an animal. My daughter must have been blind to marry you, to be so calculating even with your own mother-in-law. You're not human. At the side, Chun Yao chose the perfect moment to start sobbing, pulling at her mother's arm as she cried. Mom, stop. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have married him. One singing, the other harmonizing. What a performance. If this had been in the past, I might have softened long ago, compromised, taken out my bank card just to keep the peace. But now, I only found it laughable. I turned, walked into the study, and took a folder from the drawer. This was something I had prepared long ago. I returned to the living room and threw the folder onto the coffee table with a slap. You wanted an explanation, didn't you? Fine. The proof is all here. See for yourselves. My mother-in-law and Chun Yao were both stunned. I opened the folder and laid out the documents inside, one by one, in front of them. These are the bank statements for my and Chun Yao's joint account. From the day we got married until now, I've deposited a fixed $15,000 each month, and Chun Yao has deposited $3,000. But every month, apart from basic household expenses, large sums have flowed out of this account. Where they went, I think you know better than I do. I pointed to a transfer record I had marked with a highlighter. $30,000 for Chun, how to buy a phone. $20,000 for Chun, how to treat his girlfriend on dates. $50,000 for Chun Hao's startup. All this money came from our joint account. Has a single cent been paid back? These are the statements for Chun Yao's personal account. Her monthly salary is $6,000, but she often has large expenses of $5,000 or $10,000 for bags, for cosmetics, and the $3,000 in filial piety money transferred to you and Dad every month. Is her salary enough for that? The shortfall, was it saved from the living expenses I gave her, or was it charged to my credit card? Finally, I took out several yellowed IOU notes. This is the money Chun Hao borrowed from me personally over the past few years under various pretexts, totaling $120,000. It has his signature and handprint. To this day, not a single cent has been repaid. I threw all the evidence in front of them like a stack of cold, hard iron plates. Now, you tell me, what exactly do I owe your Chin family? My mother-in-law's face went from furious red to a shocked, livid shade, and finally, to ashen gray. She couldn't say a single word. She probably never imagined that her usually obedient and uncomplaining son-in-law would have kept such a clear and detailed account of every single transaction. Family affection can't be measured in money, she stammered, trying to argue. Family affection? I let out a cold, mocking laugh. If what you call family affection means I have to give endlessly without any bottom line, supporting your whole family of bloodsuckers, then let me tell you, that's a kind of affection I can neither want nor afford. Since Chun Yao chose to go Dutch, that's fine. The 200,000 for her brother is something she, as his sister, should bear herself. It has nothing to do with me. Not a single dime. The mother-in-law was at her wit's end. She turned to Chun Yao, playing her last card. Yao Yao, look at him. How can we continue to live like this? Divorce. You must divorce him. Mom will support you. Our Chun family will not tolerate this insult. A flicker of hesitation crossed Chun Yao's face. Divorce. She subconsciously glanced at this exquisitely decorated home, at the watch on my wrist, and then thought of her empty bank card and outstanding credit card bills. She realized that once she left me, she would have nothing. Her hesitation did not escape my eyes. At the right moment, I pulled a piece of paper from the last page of the folder. It was a copy of the property deed for this house. I placed it gently on top. In the column for the head of the household, the two words Linja were crystal clear. Oh, I forgot to remind you. My tone was light and breezy, yet it carried a fatal blow. This house was purchased by me in full before the marriage. It is my personal property. If we divorce, Chun Yao, you won't even get a single square meter. Boom! This sentence, like a bomb, exploded in the minds of Chun Yao and her mother-in-law. Both of their faces instantly turned deathly pale, completely drained of color. Their greatest leverage, the capital they thought they could use to control me, collapsed in that instant. The mother-in-law's mouth hung open, like a fish out of water, gasping uselessly, unable to utter a sound. She wanted to say something more, to continue with her guilt-tripping rhetoric. But I had no more patience to listen. I stood up, walked to the door, and pulled it open. I have made myself very clear. If you cannot respect my decision and my boundaries, then please leave my house. Now, immediately, right away, my voice was cold, devoid of any warmth, my gaze as sharp as a knife. The mother-in-law was intimidated by my aura. She pulled a distraught Chun Yao and stumbled out of this place where she had lost all face. The door slowly closed behind me. I leaned against the door panel and let out a long, deep breath. This foul air that had been suppressed in my chest for years was finally expelled. Satisfying. The mother-in-law and Chun Yao's miserable retreat did not bring the matter to a close. Instead, it was like pouring a ladle of cold water into hot oil, setting off an even more violent disaster. Chun Yao's troubles were far more than just an overdue car loan. Loan sharks. These two words, like a cancer clinging to the bone, began to erode Chun Yao's already precarious life. The debt collector's methods were direct and brutal. They first went to Chun Yao's rented apartment, but found it empty. That coward Chun Yao had long since caught wind of it and gone into hiding. So, they turned their attention to the only guarantor, his own sister, Chun Yao. That afternoon, I was in an important departmental meeting. My phone on silent mode was vibrating frantically. It was a young lady from the company's front desk. I frowned and hung up, but she persistently called back. I had a bad feeling. I excused myself to my superior and stepped outside the conference room to answer the call. Mr. Lin, the young lady's voice was tinged with tears. Please come quickly. There are a few people making a scene in the lobby downstairs, saying they're looking for Sister Chun Yao to get money back. My heart sank. When I arrived at the first-floor lobby, a crowd had already gathered. Several men, covered in tattoos and with ferocious expressions, were surrounding Chun Yao. They held spray paint cans and had sprayed 4 large, glaring red characters on the company's clean marble floor. Pay back your debts. Chun Yao was being pushed and shoved in the middle of them, her face pale, her body trembling like a helpless leaf in the wind. The company's security guards tried to intervene, but were pushed away by one of the men. Don't fucking meddle in other people's business. Her brother owes us 500,000. It's only right for a son to pay his father's debts, and for a sister to pay her brother's. If you don't give us the money today, we're not leaving. We'll also go and sit in every one of your company leaders' offices and have a chat about the creditworthiness of your employees. The pointing fingers and whispers of the surrounding colleagues were like invisible needles, piercing Chun Yao's body. Her dignity at this moment was utterly torn to shreds and trampled underfoot. In the end, the company leadership stepped in and called the police, which temporarily quelled the farce. But the consequence was that Chun Yao, for causing a severe negative impact on the company, was suspended on the spot and placed under internal investigation. That evening, when she returned home, it was as if all her energy had been drained from her. She didn't cry, nor did she make a scene. She simply fell to her knees before me with a thud. She hugged my legs, her voice hoarse and filled with despair. Linge, I was wrong. I was really wrong. I'm begging you. Save me. Save my brother. I promise, this is the last time. I'll never get involved in his affairs again. I'll listen to you, whatever you say. I sat on the sofa, looking down on her. Her face was a mess of tears and snot, a picture of utter distress. I didn't even reach out to help her up, just pulled a few tissues from the coffee table and handed them to her. You know you're wrong now. My voice was as calm as still water. Too late. Your brother's business is the result of your and your mother's indulgence. You clean up your own mess. With that, I retrieved another folder from the study. This folder was even thicker than the last one. I took out the contents, one by one, and laid them out in front of her. You thought he only owed $200,000 on a car loan and $500,000 to loan sharks. I pointed to a copy of a transaction record from a Macau casino. Last month, he lost $2 million. I then produced a printout of a WeChat conversation history. He also scammed over $100,000 from his friends under the guise of an investment. They're already preparing to report him to the police together. Your so-called car loan and loan sharks are merely the most insignificant parts of this massive whole. Chun Yao stared at the shocking evidence, her pupils contracting violently. Her body began to tremble uncontrollably, her lips quivering, unable to utter a single word. Fear, like a tidal wave, completely submerged her. Just then my phone rang, an unknown number. I put on speaker. On the other end was a gruff male voice, full of menace. Is this Linja? Chun Hao's brother-in-law. Let me tell you, don't think you can get away with hiding. You can run, but you can't hide. We've already found your home address. If you know what's good for you, get the money ready, or else. You and your wife can wait for a little surprise. Hearing this voice, Chun Yao shrieked in terror. I, however, was exceptionally calm. I spoke clearly into the phone. First, I am recording this call. Your words constitute a threat and intimidation, and I will submit this recording to the police as evidence. Second, I have never served as a guarantor for any of Chun Hao's debts in any form. They have no legal connection to me or my assets. Your debt collection activities are illegal. Third, if you dare to harass me or my family in any way, I guarantee you will immediately receive a summons from the police. After speaking, I hung up the phone directly. Then, right in front of Chun Yao, I compiled the recording I had just made, along with all the evidence I had collected on Chun Hao's gambling, fraud, and the loan shark company's illegal operations. I packaged it all and, through an anonymous email address, sent it with one click to the tip-off mailboxes of the police and the local financial regulatory authority. Having done all this, I looked up at the ashen-faced Chun Yao. The way she looked at me had changed. It was no longer anger, no longer resentment, but fear. For the first time, she realized that the man she had married was not a spineless weakling she could control at will, but a hidden heavy hitter whom she couldn't see through or afford to provoke. Events unfolded even faster than I had imagined. 2 days later, Chun Hao was formally summoned for investigation by the police on suspicion of gambling and fraud. And thanks to my anonymous tip, the loan shark company was raided by the Economic Investigation Department, and all its accounts were frozen. My mother-in-law's call came again. This time, there was no roaring in her voice, only hoarse, desperate wailing. Lin, I'm begging you, go and explain to the police Xiao Hao is innocent. Go and bail him out. If you don't go, I'll jump from the building. I won't let you go even as a ghost. Listening to her clumsy performance, I only found it noisy. I said nothing. I just hung up the phone. Then, I blocked her number. The world was finally quiet. The news of Chun Hao's criminal detention fell like a giant boulder, completely shattering the Chun family's world. My mother-in-law and Chun Yao were like ants on a hot pan, running around everywhere, begging anyone and everyone, trying to get Chun Hao out. As for me, I remained completely aloof. I went to and from work on time every day. When I got home, I would cook myself a fine dinner and, after eating, watch a movie or read half a book. In this house, one side was a tempest, the other calm and peaceful. We lived under the same roof. Yet it was as if we existed in two completely different parallel worlds. Chen Yao finally realized that in a head-on confrontation, she was no match for me. She began to change her strategy, trying to soften me with affection. She started cleaning, making the house spotless. She started cooking for me all my old favorite dishes. She would even wash my shirts, iron them neatly, and hang them in the closet. She wanted to use this method to show me her repentance, to return to the good old days where she was waited on hand and foot and could ask for anything she wanted. One evening, I came home to a table laden with a sumptuous dinner. Sweet and sour pork ribs, steamed sea bass, and garlic broccoli. The aroma was tantalizing. Chen Yao, wearing an apron, walked out of the kitchen with an ingratiating smile on her face. Linja, you're back. Go wash your hands and eat. It's all your favorite food. I glanced at the dishes on the table, then at her. Then I walked straight into the kitchen, took out 2 eggs and a sausage from the refrigerator. I made myself a simple bowl of egg and sausage noodles. Carrying my bowl of noodles, I sat at the other end of the dining table, far across from her spread of dishes. The smile on Chun Yao's face froze. Linja, what is the meaning of this? We're going Dutch. I cut her off, eating my noodles without looking up. You made this meal. I didn't pay for it, so I can't eat it. The next morning, I found that the shirt I had hung in the closet had been washed by her. Expressionless, I took it down, threw it into the washing machine, and pressed the button to wash it again. She rushed over, grabbed my hand, tears welling up in her eyes again. What on earth do you want? I've already humbled myself like this. What more do you want from me? I shook her hand off, looked into her eyes, my tone calm and cold. Chen Yao, the scope of our going Dutch has been upgraded. Now, what we're splitting isn't just money, but also responsibilities and boundaries. The chores you do are yours. The chores I do are mine. We don't interfere with each other, and we owe each other nothing. Before me, she completely broke down. She squatted on the floor, clutching her head, and sobbed uncontrollably. I was wrong. I was really wrong. Linja, please forgive me, okay? Can we start over, go back to how things were, please? She cried with such sorrow, such sincerity. In the past, I might have softened, but now, my heart had long since hardened like iron after countless disappointments. I watched her for a long time. Then I said softly, "You were wrong." No, you weren't wrong. Your mistake wasn't helping your good-for-nothing brother again and again. It was that from the very first day of our marriage, you never truly respected me, never truly treated this little home of ours as your own. In your heart, there's only your family of origin, only your mom and your brother. I, Linja, am nothing more than an ATM for your family, a tool for you to show off with and use for poverty alleviation. I turned, took a few sheets of still warm paper from the printer in the study. I walked over to her and gently placed the papers on the floor in front of her. The top line consisted of a few bolded words. Divorce agreement. Chun Yao. My voice was unprecedentedly calm. There is no longer any need for us to continue. The going Dutch arrangement you proposed was actually a good thing. It just accelerated this inevitable conclusion. She looked up in disbelief, staring at the words on the floor, her pupils filled with shock and panic. She had thought all my previous coldness and calculations were just to force her to compromise, to make her cut ties with her family of origin. She never imagined that I would, directly, rule her out. No, I don't agree. Like a madwoman, she snatched the agreement and tore it to shreds in a few swift motions. She threw the scraps of paper at me fiercely, screaming at the top of her lungs. I will not get a divorce. Linja, don't you even think about getting rid of me. I watched her vent, my face devoid of expression. When she was tired of shouting, I slowly took an identical copy out of my pocket. It's fine. I can give you as many copies as you want to tear up. I have plenty of backups here. I've already decided. and I've made all the necessary preparations." She was completely stunned, as if a bucket of ice water had been poured over her head, chilling her from head to toe. She knew I was serious. She stumbled away, probably to find her mom to discuss a strategy. Sure enough, it wasn't long before my mother-in-law's call came. This time, she didn't dare to scold me. Her tone softened, and she earnestly advised me that couples always make up after a fight, and not to be impulsive. I couldn't be bothered with her nonsense, and hung up directly. The next day, a formal letter from the lawyer I had retained was delivered to Chen Yao's hands by courier. The lawyer's letter clearly informed her that I had officially filed for divorce in court. Furthermore, it attached a detailed asset liquidation plan. Every joint income and every joint expenditure after our marriage was listed with absolute clarity. Even every transfer she had made to her maiden family over the years using my money was marked by the lawyer as improper transfer of joint marital property, demanding its recovery or deduction during the division of assets. That night, I did not go home, but I received a WeChat message from my neighbor. She said she heard heart-wrenching cries and the sound of things being smashed coming from my apartment, which lasted for a long time. I knew that Chen Yao had completely broken down. She had never imagined that I, a man who had always been gentle and even somewhat weak in her eyes, could be so thunderous and methodical once I turned ruthless, leaving her with absolutely no way out. In the courtroom, the lights were bright to the point of being glaring. Chen Yao and I sat in the plaintiff's and defendant's seats, separated by a few meters. A couple who once shared the same bed were now facing each other in court. How ironic. As the trial began, Chen Yao's performance officially commenced. She wore a plain outfit, her makeup-free face stained with tears, looking utterly pitiful. "Your Honor, I do not agree to the divorce." Her voice was soft, laced with a sob, and every word was filled with grievance. "I admit that I did some things wrong when dealing with my brother's affairs, which hurt Linge's feelings. But I have devoted myself wholeheartedly to this family. I love him and I love this family. We're just having conflicts over some family trivialities. As long as we communicate well, we can definitely solve them. I beg you, please give us another chance." She wept piteously, portraying herself as a victim, humble for love and long-suffering for the sake of her family. From the gallery, some whispers of sympathy could even be heard. I remained expressionless throughout, not even bothering to lift an eyelid. I watched her performance quietly, as if watching a shoddy one-woman show that had nothing to do with me. When it was my lawyer's turn to present, the tone shifted abruptly. My lawyer, a capable woman, wasted no words and directly presented a thick stack of evidence to the judge. "Your Honor, the reason my client is insisting on a divorce is not because of the family trivialities the defendant mentioned, but because the defendant has long-term, unilaterally, and without bottom line, damaged the couple's joint interests to subsidize her family of origin. This has led to the complete breakdown of their relationship, and the marriage exists in name only." The lawyer began to present the evidence piece by piece. These are the bank statements and credit records of the defendant's brother, Chen Hao, in recent years, which clearly show his serious extravagance and bad borrowing behavior. These are the transfer records from the defendant, Chen Yao, to her mother and brother, totaling more than 700,000 yuan. This amount far exceeds the scope of normal gifts between relatives and constitutes a malicious transfer of joint marital property. These are the records of our family's daily expenses. From utilities and gas to property management fees, more than 90% were borne solely by my client, Mr. Linge. Finally, this audio recording is evidence of the defendant's family and loan sharks threatening and intimidating my client. We have already reported this to the police. Each piece of evidence was like a heavy hammer, smashing fiercely upon the victim persona Chen Yao had just built. Her face turned paler and paler as the lawyer spoke. The judge's brow furrowed deeper and deeper. Just then, my lawyer delivered the most fatal blow. In addition, we have just received a latest police report. The defendant's brother, Chen Hao, has been officially approved for arrest by the Procuratorate on suspicion of fraud and operating a casino. The victims in this case include not only members of the public, but also the defendant's own relatives and friends. This news exploded like a depth charge in the courtroom. The gallery was in an uproar. Chun Yao looked as if she had been struck by lightning, slumping limply in her chair. From the corridor outside the courtroom, the shrewish cries of my mother-in-law suddenly erupted. "My son, you've been wronged. It was Lin Jia. He's the one who framed you. That damn beast." She tried to rush into the courtroom, but was firmly held back by two bailiffs. Her disgraceful behavior was clearly visible through the crack in the courtroom door, serving as a perfect irony. Throughout the entire trial, I was exceptionally calm, my words concise. When the judge questioned me, I stated only the facts, without any emotion. My calmness formed a stark contrast with Chun Yao's hysteria and my mother-in-law's frenzy outside. It was clear at a glance who was right and who was wrong. During the recess, the judge looked at Chun Yao, then at me, and began to mediate in a solemn tone. "Defendant, based on the evidence currently presented by the plaintiff, you have indeed committed a major fault in this marital relationship. This court advises that it would be best for you to agree to a divorce. Otherwise, once a judgment is rendered, the division of property will be very unfavorable to you." The judge's words were tantamount to pronouncing Chun Yao's death sentence in advance. Unreconciled, she began to launch her final offensive after the court adjourned. She called our mutual friends and relatives one by one, tearfully complaining about my coldness and heartlessness, even fabricating rumors that I had someone else outside, which was why I was in such a hurry to divorce her. She attempted to ruin my reputation through public pressure and force me to submit. Unfortunately, she underestimated me. I directly compiled all the evidence organized by my lawyer into a single electronic file and sent it to every single person who had received her call. In the face of the truth, all her lies and sob stories appeared pale and powerless. Those friends who had initially intended to call and persuade us to reconcile all fell silent after seeing the evidence. They never contacted me again, but they also began to distance themselves from Chun Yao, intentionally or not. One afternoon, I sat on a bench outside the courthouse, watching Chun Yao and her mother sitting on the ground, slapping their thighs and wailing, attracting a crowd of onlookers. The sun shone on me, warm and pleasant. I calmly stood up, straightened my collar, and turned to leave. It was as if the farce behind me was just a part of the city's noise, having nothing to do with me anymore. The outcome of this war, orchestrated by me, was already decided. While waiting for the verdict, I moved out of the home filled with oppressive memories and temporarily checked into a service department. The world had never been so quiet. But for the Chun family, the sky had completely fallen. Chun Hao's case soon went to trial, and a verdict was delivered. For the crimes of fraud and operating a casino, with the multiple offenses combined, the huge amount of money involved, and the egregious nature of his actions, he was sentenced in the first instance to 8 years in prison and a fine of 500,000 yuan. I did not go on the day of the sentencing, but from the live video a friend sent me, I saw the full panoply of human reactions. The moment the judge's gavel fell, my mother-in-law let out a scream and fainted on the spot. My father-in-law, that habitually taciturn man, also clutched his chest and collapsed to the ground. Chun Yao, however, stood there like a soulless statue, her eyes vacant. Chun Hao was handcuffed by the bailiffs and led away. As he passed the public gallery, his gaze cut through the crowd, venomously locking onto my direction, even though I wasn't there. Watching his hate-filled eyes in the video, I felt not a ripple in my heart. I even felt a little like laughing. Hate me? The one you should hate the most is your own insatiable greed, and your foolish family who pushed you into the abyss. The matter was soon reported by the local media. A glaring headline: "Man addicted to gambling swindles friends and family. Brother-worshipping sister bankrupt herself but still can't fill the hole," occupied the local news section. Although our real names were omitted in the report, the detailed specifics were enough for everyone who knew us to connect the dots. For a time, public opinion was in an uproar. The term brother worshipper, along with Chun Yao's name, became the biggest joke and topic of gossip in her social circle. Criticisms of boundless indulgence and discussions about family boundaries sparked heated debates online. And I, at the center of this media storm, took on a new role. Using a brand new anonymous account, I wrote a long post under the most intensely debated topic. The title was "My Go Dutch Marriage, a Long-Planned Self-Rescue." As someone who had lived through it, I told my story calmly and with restraint. I described how I went from making concessions step by step to being pushed to the edge of cliff and finally choosing the most extreme, yet most effective, way to set boundaries and protect myself. I made no accusations, nor did I play the victim. I just calmly stated the facts and analyzed the pros and cons. This article, like a stone thrown into a lake, created 1,000 ripples. It was frantically reposted, liked, and commented on. Countless people with similar experiences found a sense of resonance in the comment section, sharing their own pain and struggles of being held hostage by kinship. My article became an outlet for their emotions and a mirror for them to see reality clearly. And the originator of all this, Chun Yao, also saw the article. I don't know what mood she was in when she finished reading it. I only know that her last straw of hope had also been broken. Due to the suspension and investigation by her employer, coupled with the immense negative impact of this scandal, she was formally dismissed, completely unemployed. To scrape together the fine for Chun Hao, and to escape the relatives and friends who came knocking to demand repayment for the money Chun Hao had swindled from them, my mother-in-law and father-in-law were forced to sell their house in their old hometown. Even so, the hole in the fines was still huge. Their family moved from the city to the suburbs, renting a cheap, dark, and damp rental house. Their life fell into an unprecedented, desperate situation. One night, I received a text message from Chun Yao, more than a dozen messages in a row, filled with humble repentance and pleading. Linja, I really know I was wrong. I regret it. I regret it so much. I have nothing now. My job is gone. My home is gone, and my parents are sick. I only have you. Can you take me in, even if it's just to give me a place to live? I'll do anything for you. I read them one by one with a blank expression. Then, I selected her number, clicked, and blocked her. At the same time, I blocked all of her social media accounts. Chun Yao, your world has collapsed, but in my world, the sun is shining brightly. I will not let your shadow cast upon my life, not even for a fraction of an inch. I returned to that former home and packed all of Chun Yao's belongings, clothes, bags, cosmetics, one by one into boxes. It filled 5 large cardboard boxes. I called a moving company's truck and sent these boxes, along with our crooked wedding photo, to her parents' new address in the suburbs. After doing all this, I stood in the empty living room and looked around. All traces of her had been erased. This house, finally, completely belonged only to me. The court's judgment arrived as scheduled. The result was exactly as I had expected. The court ruled in favor of the divorce. Regarding the division of property, because Chun Yao had committed a major fault of maliciously transferring and damaging the joint property of the husband and wife during the marriage, she was only awarded a symbolic 10% of the joint savings. As for the premarital property under my name, the car, as well as my personal investments and savings, they were all fully protected by law and had nothing to do with her. To put it simply, she, Chun Yao, left with nothing. I had my lawyer send her a scanned copy of the judgment. It is said that the moment she saw the judgment, she was first stunned, then frantic. She couldn't believe that after giving so much for this family, she would end up with nothing. She cried and screamed, saying she wanted to appeal, that the judiciary was unjust. But it was all just the wailing of a defeated dog, the last struggle of a spent force. A few days later, the 5 large boxes I had sent were delivered to the dilapidated rental house she was living in. Inside the boxes, I also included a letter with only one sentence, going Dutch from beginning to end. Your things belong to you. My life belongs to me. This letter became the last straw that broke her. The neighbor said that after she received the package, she went completely insane. She rushed to the rooftop of that dilapidated residential building, crying my name hysterically, wanting to jump off. Fortunately, the neighbors and her parents who rushed to the scene held her back tightly, preventing a tragedy. She was sent to the hospital, waking up in a pale hospital bed, looking at her equally gaunt and desperate parents beside her, looking at the gray sky outside the window. I don't know if, at that moment, she had a real, albeit belated, reflection on her absurd first half of her life. And I started a new life. I hired a professional housekeeping company to give the house a thorough deep cleaning, inside and out. All the double items were replaced. The bed, the sofa, the dining table, the curtains. I threw away all traces of the past and transformed that home into a simple, cold, and orderly space that belonged entirely to me. I enjoyed this unprecedented freedom and tranquility. At the company, because of the calmness, decisiveness, and strong execution I showed in handling this family dispute, my superiors looked at me in a new light. They believed that I was a meticulous person who could handle complex problems. Soon after, I was promoted to department head, and my salary doubled. I began to devote more energy to self-improvement. I got a gym membership and went 3 times a week without fail. I started to learn new investment and financial management knowledge and allocated my assets more reasonably with steady growth in returns. I signed up for a wine tasting class and a diving course, and on weekends, I explored areas I had never been in contact with before. My life became more fulfilling and exciting than ever before. The time I had lost due to the trivial matters of Chun Yao and her family, I was getting it back, little by little. The friends who had been estranged because of Chun Yao also reconnected with me, asking me out to dinner and drinks. They patted me on the shoulder and sincerely congratulated me for finally escaping from the sea of misery. My social circle also became clean, positive, and uplifting. One weekend afternoon, I was driving along the coastal highway. Sunlight, sea breeze, the air of freedom. I turned on the stereo and played my favorite song. I looked in the rearview mirror at my refreshed, determined self. I knew my life had completely turned a new page. The joy from the promotion and raise didn't last long. After working in the new position for half a year, I hit a bottleneck. The routine management work, though stable, was extinguishing my passion. Deep down, I longed for a freer, more creative life. So, I made a decision that stunned everyone. I resigned. Using the savings and investment returns I had accumulated over the years, I started my own small studio. It had 2 business directions: personal investment consulting and online content creation. I expanded my anonymous article about AA marriage into a series. From the perspective of a calm observer and someone with first-hand experience, I deeply analyzed the psychological motives and coping strategies behind social phenomena like obsessively supporting one's younger brother, freeloading off one's parents, and emotional blackmail using family ties. I taught people how to establish healthy family boundaries, how to identify and refuse unreasonable emotional extortion, and how to maintain an equal, healthy, intimate relationship while protecting themselves. My articles were logical, with real case studies and sharp, pointed views that hit a nerve. Soon, my account became a viral sensation online. My follower count soared from 0 to hundreds of thousands. I became a moderately famous relationship blogger, or rather, a family relationship mentor. Every day, I would receive a large number of private messages. Countless versions of me were pouring out their pain and struggles to me. I replied patiently, using my experience to offer them practical advice and emotional support. This feeling of being needed and of being able to genuinely help others gave me an unprecedented sense of satisfaction and accomplishment. Chen Yao, along with her family, also saw my articles. I don't know how they found them. Perhaps a friend forwarded them, or maybe it was a big data push. I only heard from a mutual friend that after seeing my articles, Chen Yao's mother was so angry she was hospitalized again. As for Chen Yao herself, she locked herself in her room for days and nights. Her virtue as a dutiful wife, once her greatest pride, was now being criticized across the internet as a poverty alleviation marriage. The family ties she once used to control me had become the emotional blackmail that everyone condemned. And I, the useless waste she had looked down upon, had transformed into a beacon of clarity admired by countless people. This dramatic reversal of status and public opinion was probably 100 times more painful for her than leaving the marriage with nothing. She started trying to find a job, but she was almost 35 with a mediocre education and unremarkable work history, and on top of that, the widely known scandal. No decent company was willing to hire her. After hitting wall after wall, her life sank into a deeper quagmire. When it rains, it pours. My mother-in-law's illness grew worse. She was diagnosed with uremia and needed long-term dialysis, perhaps even a kidney transplant. This meant astronomical medical expenses. Chen Yao was at her wit's end. But this time, She didn't dare come to me. I learned about it through a friend. In my heart, there was not a trace of sympathy, nor any sense of schadenfreude. It was like watching a piece of social news that had nothing to do with me. Their suffering was the fruit of the seeds they themselves had sown. I had no obligation, nor any interest, in playing the role of the saint who saves them. But I did do something. In the name of my studio, I made an anonymous donation to a local charity that assists patients with serious illnesses. The amount was not large, but not small either. Consider it the last bit of good karma to end the unfortunate bond between me and her family. From then on, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. We owed each other nothing. My brother-in-law, Chun Hao, had his chances for parole revoked due to bad behavior and repeated rule violations in prison. He would have to serve the full, solid 8 years inside. The Chin family's last hope was completely extinguished. I bought a new, larger house on the other side of the city, a top-floor duplex with a huge terrace. I personally designed the decor style, simple, modern, and full of a sense of technology. Here, there wasn't a single trace of my past marriage. Every corner was inscribed with my name, filled with my presence. When friends came to visit my new home, saw my new life, and the booming development of my studio, they all marveled at my decisiveness and courage. They say I'm like a phoenix reborn. I say I'm not a phoenix. I'm just an ordinary person who finally broke free from a cage and learned to live for myself. A new life brought new opportunities. At an industry summit, I was invited as a special guest in the new media field to share my entrepreneurial experience. After the speech, a woman walked up to me and extended her hand. "Mr. Lin, hello. Your speech was brilliant. I'm Su Qing." She wore a well-tailored business suit, exuding a capable and sharp aura. Her eyes were bright and full of confidence. We exchanged business cards. I later learned that Su Qing was a partner at a well-known domestic venture capital firm, successful in her career and financially independent. We started to connect. At first, we talked about work, investments, and industry trends. Then, slowly, we started talking about life, values, and our views on family and money. I was surprised to find that our views on these matters were highly aligned. She also came from an ordinary background, having fought her way to her current position step by step. She, too, had felt exhausted by her family's constant demands. She also believed that the foundation of a healthy, intimate relationship is equality, respect, and being independent yet mutually supportive. Talking with her was a pleasure. I didn't need to be guarded, calculative, or worry that a wrong word would lead to moral judgment. I could feel a long-lost sense of ease and respect that came from the heart. This was something Chun Yao had never given me. Our relationship warmed up naturally with each meeting. And Chen Yao found out about Su Qing's existence. She probably saw a photo of me at the summit in some financial news report, and also saw the radiant Su Qing standing by my side. Jealousy and regret consumed her heart like venomous snakes. She began a frenzied attempt to re-enter my life. She somehow got my new phone number and sent me one lengthy apology letter after another, thousands of words long, filled with humble repentance and reminiscences of the past. She even went to my parents' house, crying and kneeling, begging them to persuade me to take her back. She also resorted to stalking, trying to create the illusion of a chance encounter downstairs from my office and at the entrance of my residential complex. One time, Su Qing and I had just finished dinner and were walking out of the restaurant when I saw her across the street, a haggard woman with venomous eyes. It was Chen Yao. She stared at us intently, her gaze as if wanting to devour us whole. Su Qing noticed my unease and followed my gaze. She didn't ask anything, just gently took my hand. That warmth and trust instantly pulled me out of the nauseating feeling of being watched. In front of Chen Yao, I squeezed Su Qing's hand back, then turned and called a car for her. After seeing Su Qing off, I directly dialed the police. Citing severe harassment, I applied for a restraining order. At the same time, I sent Chen Yao one last message. If you appear in my life again, the next time, we'll see each other in court. I also upgraded my home security system, completely cutting off any possible interference from her. My decisiveness seemed to have an effect on her family as well. After being exhausted by illness and debt, her parents finally began to reflect. They directed all their resentment towards Chun Yao. They started blaming her, saying she had spoiled Chun House since he was a child, that it was her brainless idea to insist on going Dutch, which made me, the golden goose, slip away, causing the whole family to suffer with her. The backlash from her own family was more brutal than any external blow. For the first time, Chun Yao tasted what it truly meant to be deserted by everyone. Su Qing learned about the whole affair. She didn't retreat because of it. Instead, she admired my principles and decisiveness even more. She said to me, "Linja, I couldn't be a part of your past, but I am willing to build a better future with you." That night, we looked at the starry sky outside the window, planning our future together. To see the northern lights in Iceland, to witness the great animal migration in Africa, to open a coffee shop that we both love. Everything was filled with hope and light. Looking at this independent, clear-headed, and warm woman beside me, my heart was filled with gratitude. Thankful to her for making me believe that true love really exists. The collapse of the Chun family came faster and more thoroughly than I had imagined. After draining the family of its last penny, my mother-in-law's illness still claimed her life. Unable to bear the blow of his wife's death, my father-in-law fell ill and never recovered. He followed her less than 6 months later. Chun Hao, that once insufferably arrogant brother-in-law, had his leg broken in a prison fight. Later, it was discovered that he had contracted a serious illness. With no one from his family to care for him and no money for treatment, he could only cling to a meager existence in the prison's medical clinic. The entire Chun family fell apart, leaving only Chun Yao. She had truly become all alone in the world. The immense blow caused her already unstable mental state to completely break down. She began to act erratically, sometimes muttering to herself, sometimes wailing and causing scenes in the street. She was kicked out by her landlord and, from then on, wandered the streets. One time, I was driving with Su Qing and passed under an overpass. While waiting for a red light, I glanced casually and saw a familiar figure. The woman, dressed in filthy, tattered clothes, her hair matted like dried grass, was rummaging through a trash can for something to eat. It was Chun Yao. She was so thin she was unrecognizable. Her eyes were murky, bearing no resemblance to her former self. Su Qing saw her too. She squeezed my hand and asked softly, "Should we help her?" I shook my head without a word. The light turned green. I stepped on the accelerator, and the car drove smoothly over the overpass, leaving that figure far behind. My heart was completely unmoved. It wasn't that I was cold-blooded, but I knew that some people are beyond help. Her predicament today was no one's fault but her own. Step by step, she had pushed herself into the abyss with her own hands. The greatest mercy for her was to let her fend for herself, to have no more involvement. Later, through a friend who worked in the judicial system, I anonymously reported Chun Hao's critical illness in prison to the relevant departments, ensuring he would receive the most basic humanitarian treatment. And that was all. Su Qing's and my wedding was held on a sunny autumn afternoon. There was no elaborate ceremony, no boisterous guests. We invited only a few of our closest friends and had a simple, warm party on a lawn with a view of the sea. The wedding rings we exchanged were very special. I designed them myself. 2 simple bands, with each other's names and the letters engraved on the inside. Here, AA no longer stood for a financial calculation. It represented appreciate and achieve, to appreciate each other and to help each other achieve. This was our most beautiful hope for marriage. After the wedding, I posted a single photo on my social media. It was of Su Qing and me, embracing and smiling in the sunset. The caption read, "On the road ahead, we will strive together and achieve together." It said that Chun Yao saw it too. Someone said they saw her on a street bench, staring at the screen of a battered old phone, crying her heart out for a whole afternoon, drawing the stares of countless passers-by. A few days later, I received a copy of a document from the prison. It was Chun Hao's critical condition notice. After signing for it, I threw it directly into the office shredder without a second glance. The grudges of the past, along with those shredded scraps of paper, dissipated completely. Su Qing and I began our new journey. We went to many places and saw many landscapes. We walked hand in hand through the streets of foreign lands, savoring every beautiful and free moment of life. Everything in the past became a lesson in my life, It taught me to set boundaries, to discern people's hearts, and it made me cherish everything I now possess even more. A few years later, my studio had grown into a well-known consulting firm in the industry. The articles I wrote about the AA, marriage principles, and family boundaries were compiled into a book, published, and unexpectedly became a bestseller. I helped many people and also achieved success myself. Su Qing's career also reached a new level. She became one of the youngest directors in her company. Our family assets reached a new height, truly achieving the dual-track, A-style happiness we had hoped for. We didn't have children of our own. Instead, through official channels, we adopted a brother and sister who had lost their parents in an earthquake. We strived to create a growing environment for them that was full of love, yet understood respect and equality, hoping they would not repeat the mistakes of our previous generation. News about the Chun family gradually faded away. The last I heard was that Chun Hao, in the end, didn't make it and died of his illness in prison. His death was like a stone tossed into the ocean, creating no ripples at all. Occasionally, in some local reports about social aid organizations, I would see some blurry photos. In the photos, among the homeless psychiatric patients receiving aid, there seemed to be a figure that looked like Chun Yao. But I only took a passing glance and didn't delve any deeper. Who she was, how she was doing, was no longer important to me. At a public speech for university students, I shared my story. I didn't mention anyone's name. I just said, I was once held hostage by so-called kinship, morality, and responsibility, living like a marionette. Until one day, I learned to say no to my own life, learned to strictly adhere to the Goat Dutch system, learned to set up insurmountable boundaries for myself, and only then did I truly gain the right to breathe and the freedom to choose. Remember, students, your kindness must have an edge. Your love must also have a bottom line. When the speech ended, the applause from the audience was thunderous. I saw the light of inspiration twinkling on many young faces. Returning home, I pushed open the door. Su Qing was smiling, waiting for me in the entryway, holding a glass of warm water. We looked at each other and smiled. Everything was understood without words. We planned together to do more charity projects in the future, to help those children who are truly in need, to use our strength to make this world a little better. The night was deep. I stood before the floor-to-ceiling window on the top-floor terrace, overlooking the countless lights of the city below. The distant neon lights flickered, as brilliant as a river of stars. My heart was filled with peace, tranquility, and abundance. I knew that this was the life that truly belonged to me, and it had only just begun.